Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A nationally televised debate will begin in less than an hour. It's not a presidential debate, but it does include presidential candidate. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. California Governor Gavin Newsom and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis are facing off tonight. KPBS reporter John Carroll talked to local political experts about what to expect.
This is an early look at the future, potentially, of both parties. And this could be a preview of the 2028 presidential race.
You've got two governors that probably aren't going to have a shot in 2024, trying to position themselves as front runners in their respective parties, bearers of the party tradition for 2028.
There you have the macro view of what's going on here from two longtime political science professors. This all started a year ago when Gavin Newsom challenged Ron DeSantis to a debate. So can we expect tonight to just be a high-level dog and pony show? No, say Carl Luna and Thad Kauser. Both say there will be important things to learn about what is said tonight.
It's also a debate between the governing visions of California and the governing visions of Florida, and seeing a full-throated defense of each of those that can help us decide, well, what state do we want to live in and what vision do we want for the nation going forward?
This could be the opportunity for a good point-by-point comparison on health care, on education, on LGBTQ rights, on border and immigration, on housing costs.
Or, Luna says, it could be something else.
I think it's going to degenerate into something much more personal. So that seems to be the way these things go these days.
I think both candidates will be trying to get under the other's skin. It's clear that these are two people who don't have a lot of professional respect for each other.
Luna says there's really no downside for Newsom here, as he's insisted he's not going to get into the 2024 race. The stakes, he says, are much higher for DeSantis, who's been slipping in the polls for weeks. We'll find out tonight. The debate airs on the Fox News channel beginning at 6. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A round of rain arrived in San Diego County. We saw scattered showers overnight and this afternoon, making for a wet commute for many drivers. Meteorologist Jeff Cornish has a first look at the forecast.
Well, we do have some clouds out there and some spotty showers for some. You can see some of these sprinkles and showers are going to be rolling through the area this evening and into tonight. Just use extra caution if you're traveling around. Wet roads do certainly lead to some driving mishaps from time to time. A little nippy at the Mount Laguna, 45 at Borrego Springs, 53 in San Diego with the showers around. Future satellite and radar shows that we're dealing with some of this moisture. It's not a steady, widespread rain, though. We'll have more details on this ahead.
Hamas has freed more Israeli hostages for the 7th day in a row. But as Laura Aguirre reports, the temporary truce agreement between Israel and Hamas is also growing more challenging.
This process is producing results. It's important, and we hope that it can continue.
Hope in the form of a truce still holding on day 7, but tenuous and heading toward another deadline in just hours. Secretary of State Tony Blinken in Israel Thursday, meeting with both Israeli leaders and the Palestinian Authority president. The U.S. has been key to truce negotiations, along with Egypt and Qatar, helping to secure the release of hostages out of Gaza and getting convoys of humanitarian aid in. But the releases have become more sparse, with one Israeli official suggesting it's not just because hostages are being held in different locations.
We've seen for multiple days now Hamas playing psychological games with the people of Israel, with the families of the hostages, releasing children without their parents, parents without their children, changing lists at the last minute. If that agreement isn't upheld, we will move to the next stage.
The U.S. is said to be putting pressure on Israel to be more precise in future strikes and better protect civilians, multiple sources confirmed to CNN. The IDF keeping any operational plans close to the vest.
We're not determined that we are going to go here or there. We have approved our operational plans for the next stages.
Meaning that in this stage, while the truce lasts, freeing hostages remains Israel's focus.
They have to come home. We have to bring them home. That is what we're doing.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
Chula Vista council member Andrea Cardenas hasn't been showing up to city council meetings. KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki says she could lose her seat if that keeps happening.
Welcome, everybody, tonight to the Chula Vista City Council meeting.
It's been almost a month since Cardenas was charged with fraud and grand theft for allegedly stealing a federal pandemic aid loan.
Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Councilmember Cardenas is absent.
It's also been a month since she came to work at Chula Vista City Council meetings. The first-term council member has missed both meetings held in November, citing personal health matters. Enough absences could be a serious problem for Cardenas. 4 in a row would actually be enough to remove her from office, according to Chula Vista City Charter. But her absences can be excused if she files a request, and if the rest of the City Council approves it.
This is approval of an excused absence request from Councilmember Cardenas for the November 14th, 2023 City Council meeting.
Please vote.
That's exactly what they did earlier this week, excusing one of the missed meetings, which means it won't count towards her removal. Chula Vista Mayor John McCann was the only vote against excusing her absence. In an email to KPBS, he said that Cardenas' absences mean that people in her district aren't getting the representation they deserve, and that that's more evidence that she should resign. Cardenas did not respond to a request for comment. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
The California School Board Association is welcoming thousands of trustees and superintendents from across the state this week. The largest education leadership conference on the West Coast is happening in San Francisco. KPBS education reporter MG Perez brings us a virtual visit with some of the San Diegans who are there.
They are postcard-perfect moments with California students who are passionate about their education and the future they face in school. Dozens of student school board members collaborating in their Young Fellowship of Learning. Pics provided by Matthew Kitoriano, senior student trustee of San Diego Unified.
Students are the most honest group you will ever listen to. I mean, because we're the ones that are in those dusty classrooms. We're the ones in those spaces, and so we're forced to be honest with what's happening.
Along with the student board members, there are also 4,000 other education leaders from across the state meeting in San Francisco through the weekend. They are superintendents, trustees, and policy experts collaborating on solutions to gun violence, mental health issues, and learning loss created by the COVID shutdown, together, face to face.
Sometimes this position, I think, can be a little isolating because it's such an unusual job description.
Sabrina Bazzo is president of San Diego Unified School District's Board of Trustees. She tells us the other topic of conversation is the political divisiveness that has ripped through just about every school board in the state.
All the time that it's taking to focus on those issues for my colleagues is taking away from the time that they're able to spend on student issues and focusing on student success, which is what our primary job should be.
Do you have the data that shows that the work that's actually happening is meaningfully affecting students' lives?
This is Matthew Kitoriano's second year on the San Diego Board of Education. He's mentoring other student leaders who face the same issues with their adult colleagues.
So as the student board member, I almost feel like a mediator of I'm here as a face to look at to realize the changes that you need to make for our schools and our education system.
Deborah Shade is board president of the Solana Beach School District. She was also just elected incoming vice president of the California School Board Association.
Everything we're doing is really to prepare California for the future. It's really to get these kids and what I call the lift of public education, allowing these kids to have an opportunity and a trajectory in their life where they're going to thrive and contribute back to our society.
And maybe have a little time to enjoy the view along the way.
Because students not just represent our schools and represent the issues that are happening in our schools, we are those issues.
MG Perez, KPBS News.
We're approaching the end of another year and another record for injuries due to falls from the border wall. And with the wall nearly twice as tall as it used to be, the injuries keep getting worse. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis talked to doctors who say the wall is creating a public health crisis.
When Dr. Alexander Tenorio began his residency program at UC San Diego Health, he didn't expect to see a lot of migrants and asylum seekers. After all, he specializes in brain surgery. But then he covered a couple of shifts in the trauma unit.
And I started noticing all these brain and spinal cord injuries from migrants coming in. And the reason it stuck with me is because my parents, they're immigrants. They crossed the same border, so that was very personal to me. So I started just looking into it.
These patients had something else in common. All of them had fallen from the San Diego section of the border wall. Tenorio saw broken backs, collapsed lungs, and severe brain trauma.
Once you get above 10 feet, that's when you start seeing these injuries that look like high energy car accidents.
UC San Diego Health is on pace to receive more than 360 border wall related hospital admissions in 2023, a new record. In fact, the hospital has seen a record number of border patients every year since 2019. That's when the Trump administration increased the border wall height from 17 feet to 30 feet. And the numbers just keep going up.
So in 2018, only less than a dozen patients falling off the wall with serious injuries. And now it's, 340 or plus a year, or at least 2 a day.
Dr. Jay Doucette is head of the trauma unit at UC San Diego Medical Health Center in Hillcrest. He's been on the front lines of this epidemic since the beginning.
Before, we might see a foot fracture or a leg fracture. Now we're seeing everything. Severe brain injuries, crossed chests, pelvic fractures.
Records also show that more women are being hospitalized from border falls. In 2019, less than a quarter of admissions were women. So far in 2023, almost half of fall patients have been women, including more than 20 who were pregnant. This impacts the entire hospital system. Median cost per patient is almost $300,000. The vast majority of those costs are paid for by taxpayers, mostly through the state's Medi-Cal system. These cases also required highly trained specialists who are already overburdened with patients. Doucette says people needing spinal surgery are particularly impacted.
There are very few spine surgeons available in San Diego. And the waiting time for all patients, not just border fall patients, but for anybody in San Diego who has a spine fracture, they're now waiting twice as long as the national average to get their fractures fixed.
Both Drs. Tenorio and Doucette have been sounding the alarm, trying to get people in positions of power to recognize this as a public health crisis. Tenorio was even an expert witness for Congress at a Homeland Security Committee hearing in July.
Ultimately, these raised border walls have resulted in a record number of traumatic injuries, increased severity and mortality, and increased economic burden to our hospital systems.
Doucette has spoken with elected officials at all levels of government.
They're all very concerned, but unfortunately, nobody seems to have any answers to it.
He says today's political climate plays a significant role.
It's obvious when talking to representatives, it's a radioactive issue. Nobody wants to talk about the wall. The increase in injuries has occurred through 2 different administrations, and neither of them want to talk about this.
Both doctors plan to continue researching the issue and advocating for solutions. They're already collaborating with trauma doctors in Texas and Arizona to get an idea of just how widespread this problem is. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the head of UNICEF on the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
With the holiday season now in full swing, a lot of people will be traveling and gathering with their loved ones, and that means higher potential for a rise in COVID, flu, and RSV cases. From the beginning of July to November 18th, the county reported more than 23,000 cases of COVID, 198 outbreaks, and more than 100 people died from complications of the virus. There were 1,900 cases of the flu and more than 1,200 RSV cases. One doctor was charged Sharp Community Medical Group says we could see even more cases in December.
Yes, it's going to be more COVID cases. Yes, it's going to be more flu cases. But compared to last year, I'm not sure if it's going to be as severe as we had in the prior years, because the COVID strain that we have right now is not that it's contagious, but it's not that causing that kind of a bad infection.
And he also says there could be a lot more cases than what will be recorded because fewer people are getting tested compared to previous years. He recommends getting the COVID and flu vaccines to help minimize the risks of getting sick. President Joe Biden is warning voters the effort to repeal the landmark health reform law is a threat to families across the country. Julia Benbrook has details on how both candidates are tackling the issue.
Former President Trump says that replacing the Affordable Care Act, which is commonly referred to as Obamacare, is a top priority for him. Trump posted on social media saying Republicans should never give up on trying to repeal Obamacare, adding that the failure to repeal it was a low point for the Republican Party. It was punched home by late Republican Senator John McCain with his now famous thumbs down. And while promising to deliver his own, quote, phenomenal plan, Trump never proposed one. Now, some of his own team members were surprised by his recent declaration, since they have not yet drafted a health policy alternative. One Trump advisor told CNN the declaration completely came out of nowhere.
My predecessor wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
President Joe Biden sees this as a new campaign opportunity, releasing this ad on Thursday and speaking about Trump's comments on the trail.
Over 40 million Americans today get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. His plan is to throw them off that plan.
A poll by the Kaiser Family Foundation in May found that 59% of Americans said they had a favorable view of Obamacare. Because of the popularity of Obamacare, it's a tricky topic for the rest of the Republican presidential hopefuls to take on. But it's likely they'll have a chance to weigh in on Trump's comments and Biden's reaction at the fourth GOP presidential debate that takes place next Wednesday. Reporting in Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The EPA is proposing a rule requiring water systems to replace millions of lead pipes within a decade, and that includes all lines, regardless of lead levels in tap or other drinking water samples. It's part of an ongoing effort by the Biden administration, estimated to cost $45 billion. New lead pipes have been banned in the U.S. since the 80s, but the EPA estimates there are still more than 9 million lead service lines in the country. Tibetan monks from the Governors Shatsa monastery in southern India are in the North County this week to spread their message of peace, compassion, and love. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn says while here, they're also creating sacred sand mandalas to remind us of the impermanent nature of everything.
With each careful tap of a specialized cone, Sandmaster Geshe Legden Gampo expertly places the sand onto the design of the mandala. It's a representation of the palace of a deity in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. This one represents the palace of the Buddha Maitreya. Mandala means that which extracts the essence.
We are taking the blessing of someone who is a luminous form, and by really engaging on that, by initiating on that deity and having the benefit as blessings back to us.
Geshe Tenzin Leksay is the spokesperson for the Sacred Arts of Tibet tour. He says by going through the hard work and training to create the mandalas, the monks learned patience and the peace and happiness that comes from it.
We are accumulating the merit, the virtues, the wholesome merit by really having a deep concentrations from your mind.
It was a special treat for the students at Village Gates Children's Academy to see the mandala being made at the Seaside Center for Spiritual Living in Encinitas. For 7th grader Leonardo Lee, seeing it gave him a sense of calm.
I just felt kind of like peaceful, like the silence. It felt good.
It was very interesting of not just thinking of it from one standpoint and how there was much more meaning than just what meets the eye.
Each color and each grain of sand on this mandala have a special meaning, and when it's all completed, it will be dissolved, signifying the impermanence of everything. For Gary Elliott, it was not the first time he was exposed to the mandala, but this time the concept of impermanence struck a chord with him.
And in just a few days, they'll finish constructing this beautiful illustration like our own biosphere. It's going to be swept away and dissolved in the ocean. And I'm thinking, what a real-time teaching. It has a lot of levels to it.
Especially with the impact climate change is having on the environment, he says. The monks will continue to work on the mandala at the Seaside Center until Sunday, when it will be swept away, reminding us that everything in the universe will eventually be swept away by the sands of time. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
And after their stay at Seaside Center, the monks will head to the California Center for the Performing Arts in Escondido, to create another mandala there. Today marks the end of the 6-month hurricane season. NOAA says it doesn't foresee more tropical developments until spring. Only 2 storms from the Atlantic Ocean made landfall in the U.S. And meanwhile, the Pacific, Hillary was the first tropical storm to track across California since 1997. Overall, the season saw 20 storms, including 3 major hurricanes.
Well, we are dealing with a pretty active pattern tonight with clouds and even some showers here and there. But this cool, cloudy weather pattern is going to go away, and brighter, drier weather will return for the weekend. But again, there are some showers out there late this evening and into the night, so be careful as you're traveling around. An evening shower or 2, 53 for your low. And you may need to use the wipers even into the early morning hours. Here we go with future radar and satellite. Again, not a whole great deal of moisture. It's not a strong storm system, but there is moisture. There are some showers out there. You can see little specks of green in this animation as this moves through the area. By 8 a.m., we begin to dry back out, and Friday's forecast carries the moisture away. We're going to be cool out there, but into parts of, say, the mountains of Arizona, we'll see a little bit of December 1st snowfall, but not for us. Obviously, the rain showers are going to be out of here, and well, no snow in the mountains for us. We are too mild and too dry for Friday. So here we are. El Cajon, 65 for your low. San Diego, improving sky conditions, turning a little bit drier and increasing sunshine late in the day before sunset, 66 degrees. The coastal forecast here, you can see a warming trend into the low to mid 70s, mix of sunshine and some clouds. A nice forecast for us into the inland areas. Sunshine, nice weather going from 65 to 75 from Friday to Monday. Big rise through the weekend. And into the mountains, you can see a chill in the forecast, a little bit chilly at night, especially, and even during the day on Sunday. There could be a morning shower that lingers into the eastern part of our region, so inland San Diego County for Friday morning. But then that'll be about the last of any of these sprinkles or showers. Cold nights, 31 below freezing there into Saturday night. But a chilly pattern begins to at least win out there into the mountains with the deserts getting a little bit warmer. We're going to rise from 67 Saturday to about 75 on Tuesday. So about 8 degrees of warming from Saturday to Tuesday there, with a bright setup aside from any lingering sprinkles on Friday morning. For AccuWeather and KPBS, I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish.
A reminder to homeowners, you have 12 days to pay your property taxes without penalty. San Diego County Treasurer Tax Collector Dan McAllister sent out a reminder about the December 11th deadline today. He says more than $8.6 billion is owed in property taxes. That's $566 million more than last year's total. Homeowners can pay online for free at sdttc.com. And meanwhile, mortgage rates dropped for the 5th straight week, according to data from Freddie Mac. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage fell to an average of 7.22%. However, this time last year, the average was even lower at 6.49%. Freddie Mac says the continued decline in mortgage rates is due to market sentiment shifting over the last month. It's time to ring in the high-tech holidays. This season, artificial intelligence is set up to help shoppers search for the perfect present. Gloria Pasmino has more on how and where AI is being used.
buying real gifts with the help of artificial intelligence.
We have this new Google AI-powered gifting tool.
As Lillian Rincon with Google Shopping explains, when buyers engage with Google's generative AI, they can discover items with just a few words.
I'm shopping for my 7-year-old daughter who's very picky, and she wants to be a scientist and inventor. And so I can actually query for exactly that.
Thomas Germain from Gizmodo says the more these AI tools learn, the better it is for the shopper's experience.
Right now, you kind of have to know what you're looking for. You need to know the name of the product or have a really accurate description. With these AI tools, the better that they get, the idea is ultimately they'll be able to help do the thinking for you.
But shoppers, beware. Experts say if you opt in,
it gives powerful corporations a lot more power, the power to make a prediction, the power to understand what is going to be the most effective bid in a transaction, what price you're willing to pay.
As for how some of those gifts get to you, AI is helping with that too.
In this holiday season, some customers will receive their packages that are picked, packed, or sorted by robots.
Peter Chen from Covariant explains that AI-powered robots can pump out around 3,000 packages an hour. Human hands, about 300 to 400. In New York, I'm Gloria Pasmino.
And here is a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition will have takeaways from the Fox debate between Governor Gavin Newsom and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And KPBS Roundtable is bringing together San Diego journalists to talk about the latest news out of the border region. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.